how you doing? Look, we live in a time where there's so much content out there, and it's not all the time that you watch something that can transform and really change your life. Me and two of my friends are going to take some time and just really react to a podcast that we came across, which is just phenomenal. All right, I've got a friend of mine. Her name is Keta Ngosi. She's an author. She's written a book called Journey Through the Book of Romans. Somebody that loves God and loves the Word of God. She has taken some time to train pastors and raise up leaders out in Malawi, Africa. She's really just committed her life to raising up and training leaders. My other friend, Lenita Harris, is also here. She's an actress. Yeah, she's been in different projects, Project Power with Jamie Foxx, Claus. She's also a singer, a songwriter. Her EP has recently come out, 2021. It's called Evolution. When you get a chance, check that out. My name is David Kalilani. I'm also an artist. I'm a songwriter. And I'm also a pastor. I've done a lot of work in universities and colleges, just working with a diverse group of people. And we're just going to take some time to really just give you some highlights and react to this new podcast called Esther's Truth by Connie Taylor, who is a pastor at Cross Centered Church of God. So take some time, grab some popcorn, sit back, and check out some of the highlights that we have for you from this podcast.
She refused to come. In verse 11, it says, she was to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the crown royal to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look on. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew the times.
Oh man, I can't get enough of these sessions.
Yeah.
I have so much. But let me start with, the whole setting. The king is with the wise men, and Vashti, the queen, is in a separate room, and he calls for her. And you hear from the passage that the wise men were people who knew the seasons and the times.
Mm-hmm.
And that just stood out for me, And if you really study it, you'll find out that it was inappropriate for Vashti to actually come and array herself in front of these men.
Mm.
Culturally, she wasn't supposed to do that. So what the king was asking her to do was actually out of order.
Mm.
And but what hit me was when I thought of how they described the wise men that were with the king. They were men who knew the seasons and the times, and it made me think about how different seasons will call for people to do things that in a certain season would seem out of order.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain season, they are not out of order. So you find even the Bible talking about there will come a time when those who are married should live like they're not married, because of the times that they'll find themselves in. They will have to live a certain way. And I think it's important for us to know seasons and times. I think it's important for us to know that in this time, this is how we ought to live. This is how we ought to carry ourselves. Sometimes, but when God is calling you, when you're being led by the Spirit, it may look like you're breaking protocol. But if you are discerning of the time and the season, you may actually be doing the right thing at the right time. You just need to be sure that you're being led by the Spirit of God to do what you do. So yeah, that was my first one.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a way to open it. I mean, my goodness.
I did straight away want to say that that's a very interesting position you take. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel a little bit differently about it because I'm thinking that.
Share your difference.
Yes.
I'm thinking that, and I think the podcast spoke to this. It talked about how you're positioned for the assignment. Mm-hmm. And I think the request that came from the king, it was not possible for Vashti to say yes. And I think that was part of the plan. Because Vashti was not the person that could have saved the people of Israel.
True.
It required an Esther. Mm-hmm. And that Vashti was moved out of her position and Esther was put into the position. And I think it was that request that was because if you research and you look a little bit into it, it talks about how these people had been drinking for 6 months. They had been drinking and partying for 6 months.
Who, Esther?
No, I'm talking about.
Like,
don't you
I'm
talk
talking about
Esther.
the king. All right.
Esther's having
I'm
tequila
talking about the
and,
king. No. We
a
are
little bit of
talking
gin.
about. We're
Okay.
talking about the podcast where we find it, which is King Xerxes is asking for Vashti to come. At the time he was asking for them, they'd been drinking for months.
Crazy.
And so the request was out of what is believed to be a place of intoxication. But that's not my point. My point is when you research, they talk about when he said he wanted her to come in her crown. Some researchers will tell you that what he was requesting was for her to come in nothing but her crown.
Oh, as in
yes.
Whoa.
So
as in the birthday.
Yes. So what
Hey.
that's not even the position I'm trying to bring out. What I'm trying to bring out is irrespective of whether this was the case or not, because it's not written in the scriptures. What we have is research to understand that there was this pagan king who was sitting and having a lot of alcohol with a lot of people. But the issue is, I think the request was so outrageous because it was designed to get Vashti out. She could not have said yes. But it was purposeful because the only person who could make what God wanted to do happen was Esther. So Vashti needed to be moved out of the way. That's just what I wanted to say too.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
So if I heard you correctly, you said that she had to say no, right? So it sounds like that was setting up a shift because she needed to be out and Esther needed to be in.
That's a big shift.
Go ahead.
You've got something there.
Okay, see, I'm with you on that. That's actually something that she said in the podcast that God is setting up the shift. And what my thoughts were, because I have them here, you can't get to another place or another level or even a category without shifting from where you are or shifting how you are. And so there's two shifts happening. Vashti or Vashti, I'm not sure how you want to use it. She is shifting out and Esther is shifting up or into, whatever the case is, right? And so if we think about that in our own lives, like she mentions earlier about the disruption, don't get upset when things are disrupted, because sometimes this disruption means that God is about to put some things in order. So in our own lives, how I'm thinking about that is I can look at a disruption as something bad, or I can look at a disruption as me needing to make a shift to get to my next place.
That's good.
Or to be sat down from my current place because for whatever reason, my heart has become hardened to whatever God is trying to tell me, and I'm not listening. So if I've gotten to that place, I think now the only thing that's left for me to learn from is to be shifted out of where I'm at.
Wow. Yeah, and I mean, these things happen to us, right? We get shifted out of place, we get shifted into places, and we get shifted within. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes.
So sometimes you're not being positionally moved, but you are being moved. And sometimes you are being positionally moved. The way I looked at it is, I had this word, you can either be Vashti or you can be Esther. You can be Vashti or you can be Esther. And the podcast was talking about but God is working together for the good. Whatever the shift, whatever the moving out of a place or moving into place is, what I took away from it is it's not personal. It's not personal what's happening to you.
It's not.
It's not personal.
It's not.
Because we take it so personally that we're looking for, I'm actually looking for the good in this shifting that's happened to me, because I could be in a situation of Vashti. I could be being Vashtied out because I'm not the right person for the move of God that he wants to do. And so then I'll be Vashtied out. And in my being Vashti'd out, I might be looking for the good for me. So as I get moved out, I'm looking for what's the good? Why am I being moved? Where's the good for me? Yes. Or if I'm being Estered in, I might be looking for the good for me.
That's good.
But you see, when the Bible talks about all things work together for the good, it's not for your good and it's not for my good, it's God's good. There is a good that is God's. And sometimes you got to be moved out because there's bigger things at stake. Like, for example, in this thing, it's not about you, Vashti. It's about the people of Israel. A whole nation needs to be saved. So it's not personal. And I think we take things too personally when we are being moved out or when we've been brought in.
But I think it's just many times we are so humanistic about things. So we make even the Bible, we pigeonhole it and just make it about us. And we individualize it. And we forget that this thing is written from God's perspective, you know? And sometimes we just need to get over ourselves.
That's right.
And I was thinking about what you were saying, the being Vashti or the being Esther. And I thought about David and Jonathan. How when he saw David, though he was next in line to be king, he actually he moved himself out because he removed his signet ring. He removed his robe and gave it to David and said, I see that you are better suited. Even though genetically I'm next in line as king, but you have what is required to be king better than me. So here's my robe. Here's my ring. I'm going to step down and support you to do you're going to do it better than I would. And I wish we would be people that would look at the big picture in that way.
Do you see how this takes us back to the jars?
But the Lord was challenging me that He wanted to move me into a more mature place where I'm not just caring about being cared for, but my mind is set on helping others.
I don't know if you remember the jars, but the jars were about doing something selflessly. It was talking about understanding what season, what time, whose season, whose time. So I know we're talking about somebody who was moved out of the way.
Right.
But when you bring in Jonathan, you're talking about somebody who chose to move
out of the way.
All I'm seeing right now is the ability to understand what God is doing and to be able to recognize that.
Beautiful.
And you can either, so I know I'm making verbs of everybody's name.
Come on.
But you can either be, you can either be a Jonathan or you can be a Vashti.
There you go.
You can either choose to get out of the way or you can be taken out of the way. But at the end of the day, God's purposes will be fulfilled. He will bring in Esther, not because of who she is, but because of who He has made her to be for that time. It's not personal. It's not because she was nicer, she was sweeter, she was, because if you get into the whole idea and understanding about Esther, it's a whole different story. But the point is, God had a plan, and His plan involved Esther. And I do not believe His plan involved Vashti. I really believe that the plan involved Esther. So sometimes the plan doesn't involve Keta. Sometimes the plan doesn't involve Lenita. It doesn't involve David. And so therefore you can be Jonathan and just bow out properly, or you'll be moved out.
And celebrate the other person.
That's right.
And protect the other person, because that's what Jonathan did. So it's not a sulking, okay, you do it, but it's like, I see what God is trying to do. And even though it's not me, it's kind of like, there was this rap line a long time ago in this rap song, and this guy said, I want to see you happy, even if it's not with me. Like to have a heart where you really want to see the will of God being done, even if that means that you may not be the person that's going to build the temple, but let your son do it and give the resources that are going to help him build the temple. You know what I mean? And I think in this hour, that's what's really required of us.
It makes me think of probably near the end when when she mentioned the disruption in our lives reveals to us the position of our heart.
There you go.
You know, sometimes God uses the chaos to see and the call and the command to see the placement of our hearts. He's seeing the positions of our hearts to see what position can we handle. Can we handle the assignment? Can we handle the next thing?
Because she says something in there that hit me so hard. And I'm like, why is it hitting so hard? When it says, she mentions how the Lord can say to us, yes, when the position of our hearts are revealed, the Lord can say to us, yes, you are ready for the next assignment, or no, it's time for a replacement.
Wow.
And it's like,
wow.
Oh,
yeah, that's hard. It's tough.
If you're in the position where you're the one being replaced and you're feeling like it's unfair, you're going out kicking and screaming, like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
The thing that my mind, because I think about things from a lot of different perspectives, and the thing that I'm thinking about is God's mercies are new every morning. Every morning. So if it's gotten to the place where you had to be replaced, how hardened had your heart become? Or for me, how hardened had my heart become to hearing the voice of God, or to following the flow that God wants to happen? Because in my mind, what happens is my being replaced is the only way God had to teach me whatever it was I was refusing to see all along. And with me having to be replaced, then it makes me wonder, because if I've gotten replaced, now I'm going into, well, what exactly was it that I was holding on to so tightly that I allowed myself to abort the assignment and forfeit all of the blessings, or forfeit all of the other things on the other side of me staying in that position, because I just was not willing to listen and follow what the Lord was saying in the first place. You know what I mean? So these are the things that I have to say.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here going, okay, if it didn't hit me then, you sharing it's hit me now. And it's hit me because I'm just thinking in my mind, wait, when have I been replaced?
I've been thinking about that now.
Because sometimes I find that, my gosh, the second question I was asking, not just when have I been replaced, what was I holding on? Because that's what I'm hearing. That when you look in retrospect and you think, for that, because then you get to see the playing out of what you could have been a part of.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And you get to see, and you look and you watch and you say, oh, that could have been me. Why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it me? What do I have here that can even compare?
What do I have to show for?
What do I have? What was my refusal about? What was my,
yes.
Sometimes I think about, okay, it didn't happen that way, but think about if you could speak from under the earth, like the priests who took on Moses and Aaron and had attitude, Korahites, and if you're sitting under the earth there, and in a place where, and your friends are in a promised land, and you're saying, what did I trade this for? What did I trade? Was I really just looking for a position? Was I looking for rank? What have I, what has caused me to be moved out of the way? I find that it's time to maybe reflect.
Yes.
And say to myself, just like you have to say to yourself, just like we're saying to ourselves, because it's nice to listen and talk about things, but at the end of the day, it's important to retrospect and sit down and say, are they things that I have forfeited?
Come on.
Have I been moved out of the way? And are they things happening now that God is doing through somebody else, because I just would not do the needful? I got so hard-hearted that God, as you said, There were new. I mean, God is so merciful. By the
So
time He is
merciful.
doing that,
Yes.
you have. It's game over.
It's been so long.
Yes.
You have said no to God for so long, so many times that was it. That was it.
Wherever you are around the world, if you could just get down on your knees. This is an altar call for being replaced.
Oh my God! David, you don't know if he's being serious.
Stretch your hand towards the
I'm
screen.
not sure. I'm stretching.
No,
I'm not sure.
you know what?
No, I know you're funny.
I
but
have to
yes,
make a
yes,
joke because
yes,
I'm being
it's
convicted.
a lot. It's a lot. It's a
Honestly,
lot. I know.
Yeah.
It's
as
a
you
lot.
guys were talking, I honestly, I got to a place where I started to introspect, and I was like, God, please help me.
Yes.
Let me do better.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
let me do better.
Absolutely.
You can look at these stories and think of other people, but it's so close to home. Actually, I was thinking about can you imagine how the story would have played out if King Saul didn't have the insecurities he did, and he celebrated David and relinquished his place? Like how beautiful the story would have turned out, but and yet it was his son that ended up doing that. But he was in a place where he kept on fighting, he kept on holding on, when he had been replaced, when he had been, oh,
And
Yeah.
you know, the another
My
thing that I
God.
love about God, I know that you had mentioned the original translation was the good. Everything works out for the good. I don't know that I had that one, so I had the one that's it works for your good. And so that's what I grew up like. I completely hear your perspective for sure, and I grew up with that. And the thing that I love about God is the redemption that is also available to us. So even if we have been replaced, or even if we have moved out, even if our insecurities got the best of us and we aborted the mission, we can still come to God and be like, God, help. And God can reveal to us then. He can make the things make sense to us then. And then we can learn the lesson that was in the loss. Because as long as things are going well and going right, what is it that we can learn? Because we're doing everything as we should. It's only when we make a misstep or a mistake or we experience a loss that there's a lesson that can be learned from it, so that we can make an adjustment and do things differently at another time. And so even in being replaced with that redemption, if we are introspective and if we go through and learn what God was trying to show us, there's always another opportunity to be an Esther.
Absolutely. And yes, praise God. I love that.
That is such a redemptive
Hallelujah.
perspective. You know, it's like you've shown light on the dark place.
Yeah.
Some truth is painful and it has to be said, but I love the redemptive aspect.
Absolutely.
And I also just think that sometimes God can teach us, and we don't always have to make a mistake to learn.
That's right.
But you're right. Some of the greatest lessons I have learned are from mistakes.
I am learning.
You know what I mean? Sadly,
yeah.
Sadly.
Yes. But I did want to say that that's so. It's so healing. I'm sure. You know, I just feel like we're talking to some different people right now. I'm sure. Look, if I was on the other side of this, I would just be so grateful, so thankful to God. I'll just be so thankful, because I'm thinking to myself, I know I found myself in places where I feel like I'm Vashti. I'm never going to be heard of again.
Come on.
You know, I will never appear in the story ever again. But I thank God that with repentance and redemption, you know, you can be back into a position of Esther in a certain space in your life.
Yes.
And I think that that's so
beautiful.
Yeah. So I love that. Yeah. I did want to.
Yeah, before you, this is, you know, when there's a flow like this, it's like this trickles this and sparks that. But I was just saying, I think it's very important for us to always remind ourselves that God is the reward. Like if we get to a place where He is our reward, we will not find ourselves in places where we're struggling to move out of the way, because that's not where our eyes are. that's not what satisfies
that's
us.
right.
You know, if anything, because we love God, we'll take on an assignment and run with it. But if it was up to us, we would rather just stay with our lover. We'd rather just stay with our Father. That is the reward, you know. Just like Jesus saying, "I'll go do this," but really, my heart is just to be with you. You know, the only reason, the only time I will cry is when you and I are separated. On the cross, my Father, why have you forsaken me? That was the only moment there was real pain, because he being with God the Father was his reward. You know, yeah, he
sensing that presence, being connected.
Yeah, you know, he endured the pain of the cross because of what lay ahead. He being back in glory with his Father. Like, so if we focus on our main pursuit just being God, you know, we will never find ourselves in a place where we will feel some way when we need to step out of the way, give up whatever we need to give up.
We'll be willing to get into uncomfortable places,
you know,
because he's there. We'll be willing to step out of comfortable places because he's there. We'll be willing to get out of places that look like they're rewarding because he's there. So one of the things I wanted to bring out too was the she started talking about in the podcast about, you know, being positioned and being the right person for the assignment.
Here the Lord began to minister to me that a lot of repositioning is going to happen in the kingdom because of the assignment that is ahead. The Lord knows who he needs for the assignment.
And I started thinking about putting the right players. When you start seeing the right people being put in place, it's because God is up to something. So I'm a movie person. I love movies and I learn a lot from movies. I watch movies with God. That's what I tell people. People are like, "What?" I say, "Yes, that's right." But anyway,
you have fallen sinner.
No, but I do, and I think because God is a storyteller. He's been a storyteller from the beginning. Jesus was a storyteller. So I see stories telling certain truths. And I remember when we started watching when the Avengers movie came out. That's the first one. When we saw the Avengers come out, they faced a villain or an enemy that was bigger than in their individual stories.
Yeah.
That's what I saw that. And so they each had to be positioned in a place where they had to be together. Same thing happened in Infinity War Endgame, where you start to see people come together because you're now dealing with something. And there's a need for certain people to be brought into it. Endgame and Infinity War ends with us calling Captain Marvel in. And you realize when you look at the story, it was necessary that she be put into that place.
That's it.
And I think we're talking about allowing, you know, I'm saying that the story just brought me into this understanding that we have to allow God to position the people he wants to position. Because if we keep insisting on keeping positions because we just were there before, we are putting people's lives in jeopardy because we're just thinking about ourselves. And you know, in my mind, I saw the picture of, you know, when a coach decides you got to get out.
Yes.
You can't stay
And
in
he
the
wants
game.
another player in the game because he knows the strategy. He's been watching the game for a while, and he knows who he needs to put in to overcome, quote unquote, the enemy. And if you're that type of player who wants to take it personally, don't want to leave, still carrying on, you're putting the whole game in jeopardy. At risk. You're putting the whole thing at risk. And if you're the kind of player who still stays there, you are actually you're putting the whole thing into a position of disqualification because now the person who should be in is in, but the person who should be out is still in. And we need to know when it's time to bow out, when the Lord says, out, move out in the next person.
You know,
and just because it's your time to bow out doesn't mean you're invaluable to God, or doesn't mean you're not valuable to God.
That's right.
It just means that this other person, like you may be incredibly proficient using a hammer. Baby, you know how to use that thing, and you can put that nail in all kinds of ways. But someone else may be highly proficient at using a screwdriver, and the thing that is before you is a screw, not a nail.
There you go.
And so can you put the screw in the wall with a hammer? Sure. Is it gonna look a little strange? Yes.
Yeah, very strange.
But it will be more precise.
That's right.
With the screwdriver.
You know what I'm thinking, guys?
Wow.
I'm thinking it's so profound. I'm thinking it's almost like you're talking to African politicians. I'm sorry, I have to do this. I come from a place where we have life presidents.
Hey,
I mean, come on.
Seeking out extra terms that are against the Constitution.
Come on, trying to change the Constitution so you could be president again when you finished the terms you're supposed to run. And this is not just the presidency. This trickles down to even other spheres.
That's right.
Where you know you're not as proficient as the young professional that's now coming up, but you're going to do everything to make sure he's no longer in charge of the hospitals because you need to stay in that position, but you're not effective anymore. You know, and then you that's when you find leaders who don't even work themselves out of the job.
Yeah.
They don't raise up and train other leaders while they're in position so that they can make an exit and raise up other people. Like I'm telling you, I've seen this thing in Africa a lot. I know it may happen in other parts of the world, but we need to get to a place where we should be efficient, but you're only as successful as your successor.
That's it.
When we see who takes over from you, who goes further than you did. It's the same thing. David, you're not building the temple, but you've so equipped Solomon. That's an honorable way to go out, you know? Whether it's in the music industry, look, you've made it. We know you're successful. But which young people are you raising up to continue after you?
Absolutely. I think we have this idea that success is about longevity. You know? And we're saying,
come on,
the longer my career, the longer my stay in this position, the longer that is my success. But the truth is, your success is your ability to recognize the times and to know who should be. That's right. To know who should be here. That's why I go back to what I said at the start. It was Esther that was ordained to be in that palace because she was the one who was able to have a heart for the people of Israel. She was one of the people.
Look at that.
And Vashti was not one of those people. So as far as God was concerned, you got to move. I've got to put the person with the right heart in.
Going to labor.
Because at some point, even though you might have been Esther at the start, your heart may have become like Vashti, and God has to move you and put back somebody with an Esther heart. Because an Esther heart is a heart for the people. It may take you a while, you may falter, but eventually you're willing to sacrifice your life for others. And I go back to the whole thing of Esther's truth is being sacrificial for others.
This thing is just too much. I know we can go on all day.
Yes.
But I also just want to say, I think this is also a message for the church. I'm telling you, again, the black church. Look, don't shoot the messenger. But
shoot! This guy's going after politicians. He's going up. Now he's coming into the house. Okay. Before you shoot them, listen.
Yes. A lot of black churches do this. Where people hold on to positions until they can't stand by themselves and they have to use a cane. Like, why are we so power hungry? It's almost like what validates us is what we do and not who we are.
I think that's what it is. I think that's exactly what it is. Because you're validated by what you're doing and you don't know your own identity. You don't know your own value outside of what you're doing
Jesus.
Here. And see, the thing about Esther, she knew exactly who she was. Man. Her faith rested in God. Her trust, she was relying on God. And so she sacrificed.
My
She was
God.
willing to sacrifice her life. But God came through. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Amen.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
To rest in God and to trust in God and rely on God so much that you're saying, God, I will will risk it all. If you save me, you save me.
That's
but
it.
listen, I'm going before the King unsummoned.
Jesus.
I have no idea what my fate is, but I trust you, God. That's someone that knows their position, that knows their value.
Absolutely. And this is where we're getting so excited. We're going places.
Yeah, we're going
We're
places.
going places, people, because we're so
is-
excited. But the thing is, I think even in what you're saying, I can still hear everything of what the podcast is about, which is, if you're not exhibiting, if I'm not exhibiting this heart that's being expressed right now, I have to get out of the way.
That's it. That's it.
I have to get out of the way because I'm staying in a place when I shouldn't be.
Yes.
When somebody else should be. Room will be made. If you don't go, conditions will be created for you to go. That's really what I'm saying.
You know what? There's gonna be sequels upon sequels. If you haven't seen Esther's Truth,
That's right.
That's right.
go check it out on YouTube. It's at Connie Taylor 72. You're gonna see the links that are there. Facebook, Connie Taylor. Just check out Esther's Truth. Each episode that's coming out is fire.
Yeah,
so
that's right. That's
check this out. We were just reacting. Looking forward to the next one.
That's right.
I'm gonna bring some tents, one for Elijah, one for Moses. The next time we meet, so that we can stay on this mountain.
Woo! That's right. I just want to say I'm so excited because I just wanted to say this. I want to say that this podcast triggers this in us. It triggers these conversations.
True.
So it's really important for you to go listen, so that some stuff can be triggered in you too. And you can have your own conversations.
That's it.
All right. It's been great, guys.
All right.
Till next time.
Till next time.